was a thin-faced, pallid guy with a questionable taste in outlandish clothes. My mother used to dress like that. I beg your pardon. Are you André Lobineau?
That's me. You want my autograph?
No. I was told you may be able to help me.
Help?
My name is George Stobart. I'd like your professional opinion.
Well, okay. Shoot.
Does the name Montfaucon mean anything to you?
Sure. It was the most grisly spectacle in Paris until the Revolution.
A public toilet?
Montfaucon was the place of execution for many thousands. A dark temple of death, with row upon row of arches, each one framing a grim exhibit. Scores of rotting corpses swung on creaking rope, while the crows devoured their flesh.
That explains the image of the hanged man. I found a reference to Montfaucon in Ireland, in a village called Lochmarn.
Lochmarn? That's where Pegram was digging.
That's right. He'd left the excavation before I arrived. Do you know Pegram well?
Not really. I met him at a conference. I would have liked to talk to him in depth, but I didn't have time.
When was this?
Oh, back in the summer, July, I think.
The second week of July?
Maybe. Yes, it was, just before Bastille Day.
So Pegram was in Paris at the same time as the other victims.
Pardon? Victims of what?
Nothing. Just thinking aloud. Where was the site of Montfaucon?
To the northeast, near the Canal Saint-Martin, but there's nothing there now. The old gibbet was torn down during the Revolution.
I'd like your opinion on a medieval manuscript.
Vraiment? Do you have it with you?
No, it's too fragile. And besides, there are certain people who'd stop at nothing to get their hands on it.
Intriguing. Do you have a copy of the text?
There isn't much. Only a few Latin phrases. I was kind of hoping you'd help decipher the pictures.
Without seeing the manuscript, that's a tall order.
Just tell me one thing. What does the image of two men riding on the same horse suggest to you?
The Knights Templar. Does the Templar seal appear on this manuscript? I'd love to see that for myself.
Can you tell me anything about the Knights Templar?
I sure can, Georgie. Soldiers, diplomats, mercenaries, monks, bankers, you name it, the Templars fit the bill. The greatest fighting force in Christendom, the militia of Christ.
Jeez. How did the Templars get their name?
From the building in which they set up their headquarters. The King of Jerusalem gave them part of a mosque on the Temple Mount. It was said to have been the site of the original Temple of Solomon. The order became known first as the Knights of the Temple, and later as the Knights Templar.
You're a mine of information, André.
Glad to be of help, Georgie.
How come the Templars became so wealthy?
There was a constant stream of new recruits to their ranks, many from noble families. They were required to swear a sacred oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So, their money, goods, and lands were donated to the order. The Templars soon held land in France, Scotland, England, Spain, most of Europe, in fact. The poor Knights of Christ became the wealthiest power in Christendom.
Is it true the treasure of the Knights Templar was never found?
Who knows? So little knowledge of what really happened remains. Or, if it does, the truth has never been made public.
What do you mean by that?
The Templars have attained mythological status, like the King Arthur of the Britons. There are people even now who say the Templars still exist.
Do you think that's likely?
No, not for a minute.
The manuscript is being looked after by a friend.
In Paris?
Yeah, not far from here, in fact.
Well, just give me the address and I'll come round and take a look.
I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I should check with her first.
A female friend?
Yeah, she's a woman. Maybe it was my imagination, but I noticed a predatory look in his eye. Suddenly, this friendly historian had turned into the big bad wolf. This friend, who has the manuscript?
Ah oui, the anonymous girlfriend.
She lives at 361 Rue Jarry.
Ah, I know it well. I'll drop by. Just as soon as I can.
Does the guy in this photograph look familiar to you?
No.
Thanks for your help, Andre.
You're welcome.
Excuse me.
Ah, Monsieur Stobart, n'est-ce pas?
That's correct. You remember me.
The retention of such data is part of my duty as a gendarme. That is how crime is fought, through attention to detail, not intuition.
Yes, sure. Have you heard of a man called Marquet?
Yes. He used to be known as the Mole of Montmartre. I heard he's been hospitalized, probably by one of his rivals.
Which hospital was Marquet taken to?
The Hagenmeyer Clinic, in the Avenue des Hérissons.
Why was Marquet known as the Mole of Montmartre?
Because he lived in Montmartre, I suppose.
Yeah, but why the mole?
I don't know. Maybe he ruined people's lawns.
I'd like to report an assault.
Yes, monsieur? Where is the victim?
I'm the victim. I've been harassed by a pair of thugs.
I see. And where did this alleged assault take place?
Outside the Hotel Ubu. They stopped me as I was leaving and went through my pockets.
Could you describe the suspects, monsieur?
One looked like a gorilla, and the other looked like a weasel. Their names are Flap and Guido.
Bon. I'll get them this time.
What are you going to do about Flap and Guido, Sergeant?
I'm going to bust them, monsieur. For years I have been hoping to pin something on that pair. Now's my chance. I'll show them, and the inspector.
Thanks, Sergeant. Thanks for taking me seriously.
I'm only doing my duty, monsieur.
Do you know a man named Khan? He's a shifty-looking guy with a scar on his left cheek.
No, monsieur. Has this man any connection with the bombing of the cafe?
Yes. I believe Khan was the name he used when he hired the clown costume. Is Rosso here?
Yes, he is. You wish to speak to him?
Yes, I do.
One moment, monsieur. Stobart is here to see you, monsieur.
Did he say what it was about?
No, monsieur.
Very well.
Hi, Inspector. Remember me?
But of course, Mr. Stobart. My mind is a well-ordered faculty. A mental classification system that's the envy of the Bibliothèque Nationale. No tricks, mark you, monsieur. Just exercise. Just as our muscles waste through inactivity, so our minds decay. But there is no need. If only people would learn to exercise their wits daily.
If he was trying to impress me, it worked. He was pompous and patronizing, but he had style.
Eh bien, if you called about the bombing, you're too late. Investigations have been closed.
But
I've been taken off the case.
what about the murderer, the dead guy?
It is out of my hands.
Ever heard of a guy called Marquet? Jacques Marquet?
Marquet, I know the name well. He has a record for suspected blackmail, kidnapping, arson, and art theft.
An all-rounder, huh? How come he's on the loose?
His bravado is matched only by the courtroom skills of his attorney.
Have you heard of the Knights Templar?
Les Templiers? But of course, monsieur. Their fame is widespread throughout France. We haven't forgotten them, unlike the rest of Europe.
It was the King of France who persecuted them, though.
Indeed.
That shook his cool. Underneath his cultured facade, the man was real twitchy. You're obviously a great admirer of the Knights Templar.
They were men of great honor, monsieur. The flower of chivalry.
Not everyone would share your views, Inspector.
Not everyone shares my passion for Bartok.
But if the Templars were as honorable as...
That's enough. I do not wish to hear your uninformed opinions, Stobard.
Why do you get so wound up about the Knights Templar? They've been dead for centuries. I shouldn't have pushed my luck. Maybe his ancestors were Templars. Whatever. I saw the anger flare in his eyes like a distant summer thunderstorm.
The Templars were the first true internationalists. 800 years on, and still the world is fragmented by nationalistic flag-waving fools. You will excuse me.
Excuse me.
What do you want now?
Is Rosso here?
Yes, he is. You wish to speak to him?
Yes, I do.
One moment, monsieur. It's Stobart, monsieur. He insists on talking to you again.
Thank you, Moo. What now, monsieur?
Have you heard of Professor Pegram, the archaeologist?
Molly Pegram, the second son of Lord Barclay Pegram?
I don't know. I only read about him in a magazine.
So much for the efficacy of rehabilitation. What has he done this time?
He made an important archaeological find in Ireland. Do you know Pegram well?
I have connections with the family, but I wouldn't say I knew him at all.
Is his name really Molly?
Of course not. That was the nickname he was given at school. All his friends and acquaintances know him as Molly.
Don't you want to know what I found out about the killer?
I told you, monsieur, the case is closed. I have washed my hands of the whole affair.
Then I'll have to continue my investigations without your help.
No. You must forget the business of the Crown completely. Go back to being an ordinary tourist, Stobard.
Do you know a pair of thugs called Flap and Guido?
I have known those two since they graduated from special school. Flap is a nasty piece of work, but Guido is the real brains of the partnership. Where did you hear of them?
I met them out front of the Hotel Ubu. Did you find out the ID of the guy who was killed in the explosion?
I already knew who he was.
I heard that the bomb victim's name was Plantar.
Your sources are reliable.
He was a big shot at the Treasury, wasn't he? Maybe that's why you've been taken off the case.
I'm sorry, monsieur. I cannot comment.
What was that psycho-detective business you did in the cafe?
It is my theory that the passions evoked in violent crimes create ripples in the ether, invisible to all but the possessor of a highly developed and receptive mind.
I'm impressed. Can you bend spoons, too?
I didn't think a man of your obvious intelligence would stoop to mockery.
I'm not mocking. I've had personal experience of the power of the mind. I used to get ignored at parties until I read a book that changed my life.
Really? What was it called?
Hypnotism for Fun and Profit. He looked at me as if I'd farted at a funeral.
The power of mesmerism is a rare gift, not a party trick.
You're not gonna try any of that psychic interrogation on me, are you?
Do you find the thought of my probing distasteful?
Let's just say I'd rather you didn't. I've got more doubts than doubting Thomas when it comes to mysticism.
Too bad. I think you would make an interesting subject under controlled regression.
The day I let anyone mess with my mind hasn't dawned yet. So long, Inspector. The old building managed to retain some of its original grandeur, but the modern additions look like a baseball cap on a statue of a medieval saint. I felt a little guilty as I tried the door, like I was about to rob a grave. I gripped the handle with an involuntary tremble in my hand and pulled. The door was locked.